The Cottage Grove Genealogical Society and the Downtown Cottage Grove sponsor the History Pub, and I want to thank Bart for hosting in this wonderful venue. This building was finished in December of 1908, and anybody that's lived here for many, many years knows that at one time it was Hoover's Shoe Stores and Irish Schwartz Grocery, it's Wolford's, it's been a lot of things. But Bart and his partners have brought it back to its original glory, and I just think it's a wonderful venue. And I want to thank Zeth, our sound person and audiovisual person. And I want to thank Jim Lockhart for videotaping these, or I don't know, I guess that's what you still call it. He's a videographer, and they'll eventually, this presentation will be uploaded to the Cottage Grove Genealogical Society's YouTube channel, and that's CG Genealogy on YouTube. And so in Cottage Grove, we have a loose group of partners that collect and preserve history in Cottage Grove or share history in Cottage Grove, and those are the Cottage Grove Historical Museum, the Cottage Grove Genealogical Society, the Oregon Aviation Historical Society, the Cottage Grove Historical Society, the Cottage Grove City Library, Bohemia Mining Museum, and Singing Creek. And without all those partners, a lot of our history would probably get lost or forgotten. So I just commend all the partners for keeping our Cottage Grove history alive, because we have such a deep, rich history here. And if anybody would like to volunteer with any of these partners, reach out to one that you might have an interest in, because we could use volunteers. And I want to again thank the Woodard Family Foundation for continuing to help us with our efforts to digitize all the Cottage Grove newspapers. Yes. Their latest grant, hopefully by the end of this year, will bring us up to February 28, 1957. So we have a lot of years, left to do. So if anybody wants to donate to that effort, the Cottage Grove Museum has a fund that you can donate to for newspaper digitization. And so I'm going to do a selfless promotion tonight. I'm the chairman for the Cottage Grove Mural Committee, and that is under the Historical Society. And this is the concept drawing for the goose mural that will go in the north end expansion of Bohemia Park. The Stewart Foundation is going to put a restroom facility up on the north end, just towards the tracks from the replica of the original water tower that was there on the corner. And that water tower will feed a splash pad for kids. And when you have kids and water, you need a restroom. So anyway, we are going to make it beautiful with this mural, and it's going to be 40 feet wide and 14 feet tall. And this is to scale. And the artist is Heather Endicott, and I think she's done a wonderful job capturing the emotion and the reminiscence of the goose excursion train. And so tonight we are offering our raffle tickets, and they are $2 for one ticket, $5 for 3 tickets, $10 for 7 tickets, and $20 for 15 tickets. And if you buy a $20 worth of tickets, I'm going to throw in either a goose, well, this is the Oregon Pacific and Eastern patch that, like Zeth has on the hat I gave him. There you go. Or one of these notepads that was actually sold in the Village Green train depot back in the day when the excursion was going. So you could get, this is an actual, from the time period, piece of memorabilia. And this is a replica that we got with permission from the person that actually owns the name for OP&E. So with that, I want to introduce Dana. So Dana was born, Dana Merryday, was born in Madison, Florida as the 5th generation on his father's side to have come into the world in this rural hamlet in North Florida Panhandle. His grandmother spent much time telling family stories, showing pictures, and telling of his ancestors, including visits to the family plot in the old cemetery that holds the pioneer families of that region. By another lucky happenstance, Merryday lucked out to have at every juncture in school landed in history classes taught by energetic and skilled teachers who instilled a lifelong love of living in the past. Yay. Living in Wynn's Addition in their 1910 home at 2nd and Adams, they used the swinging bridge almost every day, walking their elderly neighbors' dogs for them or heading over to the old mill. And one day, Dana was shocked to find the bridge boarded up and it said, "Bridge closed, unsafe." Unsatisfactory with answers from the city on the plans to bring it back, the Merrydays organized the Friends of the Swinging Bridge. Although often given credit for saving the swinging bridge, it was a true community effort and what would have never happened without the strong support of everyone who held a memory or a story about the bridge. Doing research as part of the restoration effort, Dana realized there was a lot of questions and unknowns about the bridges and the man who built the first one, J. Polk Curran. And that video of his presentation about the swinging bridge and J. Polk Curran is on the Genealogical Society's YouTube page. Sorry. Dissatisfied by the local political climate, he launched a grassroots campaign, accepting no money and using homemade signs, was elected as city councilor of Ward 3, which he is very proud to represent. In addition, Merryday serves on the Cottage Grove Museum Board, the Mural Committee, and is an active member of the Cottage Grove Historical Society and the Cottage Grove Genealogical Society. Dana, tell us about this the water bills.
All right, thank you. Well, mentioning all those organizations, the Genealogical Society, the Historical Museum, and the Cottage Grove Historical Society, I'm deeply indebted to all of those because I mined all their archives and collections to produce this talk. And many of their members have been essential in supporting me in my research. So I asked people to bring their water bill. How many people got them? Show them if you got them. I know there's one in the house. Well, providing the essentials of living together, drinking water, and then disposing of the aftermath, the human waste. Those are problems that happen when people congregate, and that's usually the role taken on by local government. So this is my water bill. It's not really a water bill, it's a utility bill, and it covers drinking water, disposal of wastewater, and stormwater. When you pave stuff, water congregates, and people don't like it when your yard or house floods, so you got to get rid of it somehow. So anyway, it covers a lot of things, not just water, so it really should be called a utility bill. This is the actual charges, and you can see the top figure is all you're paying for water. So that is the drinking water charge. Everything else is to get rid of clean the water, manage the stormwater system, handle repairs, do expansion, and pay off the debt from past improvements. So all those improvement funds, you see those wastewater, that's what you're paying for the sewer. That's your sewer charge. And that's your storm charge. And those improvement funds, those are debt service, paying into the reserves for when things happen. We just replaced a clarifier, and that was over $2 million. Our generator that handles the wastewater plant blew up on testing, and that was a couple $100,000, and those all came out of the reserves. All right, so when you're trying to provide utilities, 4 factors are going to affect those. So these are going to be themes that will come up throughout the talk. So these are the factors. There's growth. People just keep showing up. Regulations. The more people you have, then when it's only a few people, you don't have to do very much. But the more people there are, you got a lot more to deal with. So size does matter when increasing regulations. Decay. Dang. Nothing lasts forever. So this is 2016. We lost a big main, blew out, went through a couple people's houses. They estimate it was over 10,000 gallons of water per minute. I had just a little main break out in my park strip, and it was boiling up water. You can imagine that much water. So yeah, things break and wear out and get old. And inflation, the cost of everything goes up. Speaking of going up, here's growth. These are the census figures that I could find. 1900, we had less than 1,000 people. In the 1800s, it was a couple hundred. So when you have a couple hundred people, you don't need much in the way of services or regulation. But people keep showing up. I want to point out this period right here. That is phenomenal growth. I mean, this is pretty steady. The census put some little peaks in it, but that's a pretty straight line. But look at that. This is 54% increase right there between 1960 and 1970. So that's when the systems really got taxed and really went through the ringer. And all the way up till now. Now we're close to 12,000 people in Cottage Grove. All right, water rights. This is what gives us the basis to get our drinking water. It all comes out of the river. They've tried doing some wells. They explored wells as an option, and that just didn't pan out. There wasn't the water. But we basically have we can get about 9 million gallons a day is our water rights. That's what we're allowed to draw. But doesn't guarantee that there's any water to draw. There's been historic times of low water. So even though you have the right, it doesn't give you the guarantee. And that's certainly something that we should consider in the future, water security. So in the beginning, Cottage Grove, a small hamlet. This is from about the year 1885. And I'm guessing there was maybe 300 people in town. So everybody had an outdoor toilet, otherwise known as an outhouse. So your waste went right into the ground. And since we're in a river-based riparian area, that means we have a fairly high water table. So it didn't take long before wells became contaminated. We also were horse-centric at that time, so there was a lot of animal waste around. And the usual answer in that time was, well, throw it in the river, it'll go away. So I just want to mention also disease. So this is William Wiltus Oglesby. He was born in 1837 in Illinois, I believe. I better consult my notes here. And he came out in the 1953 in a wagon train. His dad was the captain of the wagon train, and he was driving one of the ox carts. So yeah, from Illinois. So Dr. Oglesby, very interesting character. He went to the Willamette Medical School in Salem, graduated, I think, in 1873. Was a phenomenal doctor. He also got into gold mining. He had the washerwoman mine up in the Bohemia Mining District. He got into a scrape with the Native Americans. There was a big uprising because they were tired of people trashing their land and disregarding the treaty rights. So they were on the warpath, and he got involved in that. And I think he was tried to be robbed by a highwayman in a stagecoach, and he wasn't going to take that and got into a big scrape with that. So he was a very interesting character. He also served as the city health commissioner or health officer for many years of Cottage Grove. And he was a huge advocate for sanitation. He realized that there's a direct path between filth, unsanitary conditions, and disease. Some of the things that he fought against were diphtheria, meningitis, and his particular pet peeve, typhoid. So, and this was the time when it would be common to lose infants or children. That was just a matter of course. The Mosby family lost 4 kids in a month to diphtheria. So you can imagine what a blow that would be. So he was a huge advocate for sanitation. And he wasn't alone. He advocated for it, but also from the local paper, a crying need for sewerage. Right in here, that they're talking about, we've got so much progress in the town. We've got a fine water system, we've got electric lights and graded and graveled streets, but not 1 cent nor any labor whatsoever has been expended in that most important of all improvements, that relating to health of the citizens and the town and their families, the sanitation of the city. So that was from 1903. Editorial. The Oddfellows found their own way. They put a sewer in this week leading from their property to the river, a good improvement. So in the year 1984, we're already dealing with 2 of our 4 themes, growth. They're talking about here a 4-inch main was laid from the water supply to the city. The rapid growth of the city was not at that time anticipated, and it was thought the main would prove sufficient for all purposes. It is already proving inadequate, especially in the case of fire. It would be most likely prove very deficient. So that's something else why you need a water system. This is the time of wood power. So wood stoves, wood heat, wood forages, wood everything. And so you definitely needed to have water in the time of fire because all the wooden structures and fire could sweep through. So not only did you need drinking water, but you needed water to put out burning homes. So this is a little out of sequence because I couldn't find any of Oglesby's appeals to the public, but this is from 1909 after they had actually had the sewers put in. But he was demanding that people connect to them. People didn't want to connect to them. Anybody got an idea why? They'll charge you. Yeah. So they were getting by just fine on my outhouse. Thank you very much. But he rightly makes the point that it only works if everybody participates. So I want to just share a few of his words. He was the city health officer, and this is in 1909. He dwells at considerable length on typhoid fever and its causes. He claims that our water supply contains colibacillus, as shown by investigators. And then he goes right to the point. The whole problem of the prevention of typhoid fever may be summed up in one sentence: keep human excrement out of the water. and away from food. So that's why you want to have a sewer system. Get that stuff out. Like I said, this was a little out of sequence, so back to the pre-sewer times. We have a lively city election. They had three hot tickets that were running for control of the city, or otherwise known as slates. I know that there's been a lot of discussion whether slates exist or not, but they made no bones about it in this time. They had the law and order ticket, the taxpayer's ticket, and the businessman's ticket. So they had three slates, and they also voted for sewer bonds. And the sewer bonds passed by this huge majority. I think everybody agreed they wanted to clean up the town. So 80 to 283 in favor of the bonds. So they bonded for $15,000 to put in a sewer system, and this is 1904. And so there it is. They're issuing the bonds, 5% gain on it. So sometimes local business owners would buy the bonds to kind of help out the city. It was basically loaning the city the money at 5% interest. And these were for 20 years, I believe. But then, of course, you had to pay the interest, and so that caused the city fathers to have to figure out how they were going to do that. And so, yep, they had to levy some taxes to cover the cost. All right, so here we're talking about some competing interests. I want to point out that sewer in this time literally meant a pipe to the river. And they did have the sense to put it north of town, so send it to our neighbors downstream. So they have a good grade and the route near McFarland to the river. So it's going to come out by the David McFarland house out on the Coast Fork. So another thing is this is, I want to point out the themes that, people have been complaining about the same thing. This is 1904, and listen to this little gem. The question is how to raise the money. They recognize the necessity through of thorough sanitation by sewerage, but they say our taxes are too high now. Doesn't that sound familiar? All right, here we are. We're in the building phase. We got 7 sizes of pipes. And again, I just want to point out, outlet will be the Coast Fork of the Willamette north of the city, where the force of men are now hard at work. So they hope to have this sewer in by October 1st, 1909. The total cost, $12,150. And they were very optimistic that it will carry sewerage for years to come. And this is a direct quote, prevent the existence of contagious disease and noxious surroundings. That was from the Cottage Grove Leader. Well, you probably all heard we did have a bit of a spat in government, and there was the east side and the west side competing interests. And one of the straws that broke the camel's back was that the west side, who ran the city council, decided they were going to put in a water system and charge everybody, but only connect people on the west side. So the East Siders, that was finally the straw that broke the camel's back, and they went to Salem and petitioned to separate. And for a while they were known as East Cottage Grove. In fact, that was an insult to them. They were called East Cottage Grove by the west side, and then they had to be called that officially, so they changed it to Limati by another legislative act. And so both places ended up putting in water systems. We had water systems on the east side and the west side since we were now 2 cities. So this is a view of from 1895, and if you look up on the hill there, this little dome, that is the reservoir for the west side or the Cottage Grove water system. It was ultimately a fail. It relied on springs from up on Mount David on the McFarland property. And it had, it was, I think, 200 feet above the town, so it provided enough gravity to push the water around, but it just didn't ever have the flow they needed. So this is a closer look at that reservoir, and here's a glowing description. We took a look at the reservoir of Cottage Grove Waterworks one day this week. The reservoir is 14 feet deep, sunk in blue clay and cemented. It makes a solid wall that should last always. The reservoir is 37.5 feet wide at the bottom and 50 feet at the top, and will hold over 200,000 gallons of water. And they also talked about they will be painted red, white, and blue, and the American flag painted upon it as well. So that was the west side's water side, and so here's the description. There's J.P. Curran was involved, and David McFarland was the president. Mr. Gowdy of Gowdyville. H. Orchard, I will call that name later today. He was doing the work, and the fall will be 225 feet. I was a bit off there. So that's the west side. Dang. West side water, and the east side. They were more successful. They put theirs up on Landis Hill, now known as Knox Hill, and they have a wonderful system, certainly fortunate. The basis is 75% per month to pay the interest on the bonds and carry a sinking fund. As the town grows, the revenue will also increase. Within the next 5 years, the town will derive enough surplus from the water system to pay for other expenses of city government. Since the inauguration of the town, there has been no tax levied for the city expenses, and what is more important, no tax will ever be needed. The water system is going to pay for it all. Now, isn't that wonderful? We are talking about the new town of Limati, so they didn't really have any expenses up to this point. But so far, they're making money on the water, selling it for 75 cents a month. All right, so after a while, operating two towns with a small population, probably about 200 each, they decided it's kind of expensive to try to maintain a fire department, a police department, a city government, etc., and water system. So the reasonable people decided to come back together, and they say, look, let's just get over this. One of the sticking points was that the Cottage Grove, the west side water, had run into debt, and they were not doing too well. So that was a stumbling block to reconsolidating. So they finally offered him a good deal, $3,500, and you get the reservoir and the piping and everything, and the debt. And so at that time, they reconsolidated, and even though the East Siders lost their name of Limati, they kind of got the upper hand on the city. The West Side's prominence diminished from this point on, and they already had the depot, the train depot, and more and more people were moving east, moving their businesses along Main Street. So they lost their name, but I think they won the battle. All right, here's a Cottage Grove water bill from 1904. 75-cent charge is still holding. I did the inflation, and that is $25.99 today. So if you remember back to my water bill, my utility bill, excuse me, it was about $21. So actually they were paying more for water then than they are now. But we have to pay for a lot of things they didn't. The water that they were getting from springs and streams wasn't enough to cover the need. And again, fire danger was one of the big things. So this is from 1905. They had to ration water. And there was no garden watering between any day. And they had an east and a west fire tower. So they used the bells to signal. So if your fire bell rang on the east side, 24 taps, you could water from 7 to 8 at night your garden or flowers. But otherwise you couldn't do any irrigation because you had to have the water in case you needed it for fire. There was also some other problems. We had damage, again, a little out of sequence. This is from 1915, but boys were doing mischief up at the reservoir. They tore the screens off, they shot the lock off, and other kind of boy activities, allowing animals, rabbits and squirrels to get into the water source. Or we also had an actual rat, a muskrat, dug into the reservoir and caused it to leak out a bunch of water. So it's one of those themes: decay, things break, things are destroyed, things wear out. So the answer was, we're going to go 20 miles out up to the Lang Creek. We got some water rights up there, and we're going to the Lang Creek watershed. So there's over the years, this served as Cottage Grove's source of water, drinking water, from 1909 to 2004, and they had to keep moving the source of where they drew the water. But Lang Creek here has these tributaries, Dinner Creek, and it's not labeled, but this is Prather Creek right here. So we have water rights even today on Prather, Lang, and Dinner Creek. We needed about 22 miles of pipe to get from there to here. And so they put out, it was estimated it would cost between $125,000 and $150,000. And they had hopes that this would cover enough for 30,000 residents. Best of all, the water will be drawn at Lang Creek, supplied from snow-capped peaks of the Bohemia Mountains. Pure mountain water. Remember from the camp, the auto camp, they talked about the pure mountain water? Well, there it is, coming from Lang Creek. So this is, they built a dam on Lang Creek. This is the 1911, maybe, somewhere in there, building the dam. Here's some of the crew, and two of those, one is a city councilor, and one is the city engineer, and I think it's these two, city councilor, engineer. That dam survived almost 100 years. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to power through drinking water, and so it doesn't get all jerked around. Then we'll go back and talk some sewer stuff. So this is they mapped it out. This is a real blueprint. It's still in the city vaults. Blueprint was an ammonia process where they could reproduce a line drawing. And this is along here is showing you, it's a 12-inch water main out of wood. It's a wooden pipe, wood stay pipes. It paralleled the Row River in many places. So, and then I don't know if you can. These showing where since we ran the water line, we'll just let people tap in. So this is going to come into play later. This is some of the showing where the connections are going to be made along the water line. So these are the 1909 wooden stave pipeline, 12-inch main. The problem is that it was a great watershed, but it also had some prime timber up there. So it was a national forest land, so people that had connections got bids to cut that. And after logging, it doesn't work very well as a watershed because there's a lot of runoff of silt and stuff. So they kept having to move the intake. That's why they went to Dinner Creek or it went to Prather Creek, because they would log off another section. But the good thing for the city is they put in the contract that the logging companies had to move the intake line at their expense. And this is just some prices. This, I believe, is from 1919. Domestic use, it's doubled. The bill has gone up, it's doubled. It's $1.50. And flush toilets, 25 cents per month. Irrigation, 35. Churches get a break. They're only 75 cents. Lodge and club rooms, $1.50, just like the rest of us flaves. And the barbershops, first chair per month, $1. All right, this is pre-1912. This is about what Cottage Grove was at that time, not much more. You see the northwest neighborhood over there, and this is Main Street. That's how it makes that little jog into Wall Street. And then you can see these are the water mains. And at this time, the reservoir was up on Knox Hill, and I think the reservoir on Mount David was still being used in some capacity. I saw one plan one of the times I was photographing and then didn't get it and then couldn't find it again, so I got to go back and trace that. Here's a little where the water line crosses the river right there, the water line, water main. All right, so this was the reservoir that was in use for the first Limati reservoir. And then by 1924, we needed much, much more. So they put in a new reservoir, again up on Knox Hill, then known as Landis Hill. It kind of dwarfs what was there. Here's the construction of that in 1925. It was concreted. And then here's the 1924 supply line. Cottage Grove has grown a bit. I think at this time we're close to 2,000 people. Les Coiner became engineer about this time, and he was the old guy, and they could say he could just go out and point, and they could tell where he was infallible. He would just point, okay, that's where the pipe is, and by George, they'd dig down there, and that's where the pipe was. A little aside, when I bought a 1910 in the Winds edition, and when we replaced the sewer line, it was really a leach line. It was so broken, old concrete. My maples never recovered after that. But when the pipe reached my toilet, it kept going. They just hooked my neighbor to our sewer because they had a line on the north side of Adams and the laterals going down second and third, and there was two houses in the middle, so they hooked one to me and one to the other corner neighbor. You know, just make do. All right, so the 12-inch pipe, wooden pipe, originally cost $100,000, and that was funded by bonds. They had some low water years, and they had all that logging, but they also had a lot of leaks. So this was a very inefficient system. So they estimate they lost as much as half of the water they treated before it got to town. So time to replace the water line. That was 1948, and that was a spiral weld water line, 19-mile long water line, and it was $300,000 to replace that. So things decay, right? Things don't last forever. So, but still, that was our main supply, Lane Creek. So this is the water treatment up along, I guess it's along Bryce Creek, and these are sand filters, so the water went through a garnet sand to clean it out. And old timers talk about if it was particularly a lot of rain, you would get kind of some chocolate mud coming out of your pipes because it was silt. There's a picture of Gary Williams as mayor, right there, young Gary. But it was beginning to become an issue about our water. So remember that I showed you there was some people tapped into the line? Well, the city they had a huge process to decide what do we do. If we're going to replace that line that cost $300,000 in 1948, it's going to be about $6 million to replace 19 miles of pipe in the year 2004. So there was a lot of options and a lot of discussions. They'd already built the Row River water treatment plant in 1993 because of low supply. They couldn't always get the amount of water or turbidity. The water that came was dirty or silty and wouldn't make current standards. So the easiest solution for Cottage Grove was to expand the Row River treatment plant and don't worry about the people upriver. You know, a lot of them had plugged in illegally. The original people that had permission and paid something to the city oftentimes would just let people tap into their tap, or people would illegally tap in. And guess what? The metal pipe leaked as well after a while. So they were losing a lot of water either through people tapping in or through leakage. And so the city basically decided, look, we can't afford to replace the system, maintain things, and so we're going to just expand Row River treatment and not worry about the other folks. And so it involved about 100 customers that had a history of using Cottage Grove water that were going to be left off the list. So I spoke with Gary Williams because he was mayor at the time, and in a thumbnail, here's what happened. He basically, they looked at all the options, and for the city's interest, it was prudent to use Row River treatment plant. So what they ended up doing was they donated the water treatment plant that I showed you, this one, they dumped it in Fay Stewart's lap. He was just become county commissioner at the time. So Gary called Fay and says, I'm handing this off to you. So Fay organized the Row River Water District, and the city donated the facilities that they had, and then they offered, I think it was $10,000 to each customer as like an adjustment or a settlement, because they did have a historic water use with them, so they couldn't leave them high and dry. And many of those people couldn't put down a well because they had too small a property, or there was no water there, or there was arsenic. So they really had no other choice. So we're paying off the last of that $1 million, I think, or $2 million it came up to. Then we're finally done with this option. So now, this is the Row River treatment plant. This is where all your drinking water comes from. And there's Jean Sinclair, our first mayor, female mayor. And she was Richard Sinclair's wife. So he has a history with us as a city engineer. Originally, that was just designed to supplement in times of need, to supplement the Lang Creek pipeline, but now it's providing all our water. And in 2008, that dam that we saw being built was finally taken out. Well, guess what? By 1924, our initial sewer system was, guess what? Inadequate. So it's time to expand. So here's the map of the new additions where they were going to add sewerage. This time the bonds are 25,000, 5-1. Now look at my third ward folks here. They voted 100% in support of sewers. That's because they didn't have any, so they wanted them. But the council had to assure people that there wasn't going to be a tax burden on adding these sewers in. So, but again, it was a 5-1 vote, so people are still into sanitation. I'm glad. This is the 1929 sewer map. And as I'll show you, it's still just a system of pipes heading to the river. And all the stuff that you'll see on there are hand-drawn where the sewer mains and the laterals are. And here is coming out of the Northwest neighborhood, there is your sewer outlet into the convenient Coast Fork. All right, that went on for a long time, and even in the 20s, people were starting to get concerned, because if you put sewage into water and you put sulfites and other waste into the water, it deoxygenates it, and fish cannot breathe without oxygen in the water. They've got water, but if there's no oxygen, it becomes a dead zone, biologically dead. And so that is what had happened, not just here, but all up and down the Willamette. The closer you got towards Portland, the worse it was. And so mostly, I don't know if you know Isaac Walton, but he wrote a book, I think in the 1600s, on the joy of fishing. And the complete angler, that's it. So anyway, the Isaac Walton League was hunters and fishers that were saying, we want pristine habitat for our prey. You know, we want to have fish. We want to be able to hunt. We love the outdoors. We want to preserve it. And so this was not government. This was citizen action. Citizen action about saying that, hey, we got to clean up our rivers. This is terrible. The Willamette Valley Project had been studying the oxygen levels in the rivers since the 20s and saw them really sharply declining. And so this was a voter-led initiative. They went out and collected the signatures, brought it to ballot, and it passed by a 3-1 margin. And that created the Oregon State Sanitary Authority. And so they started to plan and get organized. They were a group of them appointed, and the dean of the Oregon Medical School was in there, and sport fishermen were a huge part of the success in getting this through. We had a bunch of mills along the river, particularly in Salem, in that area, doing pulp, paper, and sulfite, and those were major contributors. They were also the biggest resistors to any improvement. So they were just getting started, and I don't know if you remember 1938, the clouds of war were gathering, and by 1941 it was on as far as our involvement. And so this required a huge expense of men, money, materials, and so the effort to clean up the Willamette got shifted to the back burner. Nothing was done. So that war lasted into 1945, and then there was the post-war period, and then there was the Korean War, and so it wasn't a great time for doing things governmentally. So they didn't really get their teeth until Tom McCall was elected governor, and it was eventually replaced by the Department of Environmental Quality, the DEQ. So another one of our themes, regulation, is starting to bubble up. This is just a random shot. This is the City Street and Water Crew, 1943. And this Oscar Smith was, he was the one that put the water system in up at Mount David. I said I was supposed to talk about storm drainage, but I had so much other material I'm not going to really get to talk to it much about, other than the need is called staggering. That was from 1983, and it was talking about pipes, undersized pipes. So you plan for one thing and growth happens, and you missed your mark. So the rule of thumb is always put in much bigger pipe than you think you'll need. So anyway, undersized pipes and deteriorating pipes. Again, stormwater is gathering all that loose water and trying to get it out so it doesn't flood your streets and homes. It's actually the smallest part of your utility bill as well. So, and it hasn't gone up much or down. So finally, Cottage Grove was pretty much ordered to do the sewer plant, finally, to change from dumping that raw sewage into the Willamette. 1941, 1942, the city finally coughs up and decides to install a sewer plant. And there it is, little old thing, not much. Right where it is today, out at the along North Douglas, out by the Speedway, the WOE. It was good because guess where were all the pipes heading? North. So it was naturally that they could flow right into that. Yeah, so they again had to bond, and I think the price of that sewer plant was I think around $50,000, $40,000. 1951, 52. 1952 was a bad time for the city. The city was in the red. The expenses outpaced the income, and there were a lot of agonizing city council meetings. One thing that they decided to do was raise the water rates, and this is 1952. Aspirin was the order of the day, August 1st at City Hall, after what seemed like all the people in town had called by phone or in person to ask about the new water and sewer rates on their bills received by mail that day. And worst of all, everyone wanted to see Don Allen, the city recorder, or to talk to him in person. Don admitted that he had a headache at the end of the day and even got it mixed up after a flood of questions. Don had to refer to 3 charts to make up the water cards this time. There are city rates, residential, out-of-town rates, residential, commercial rates without water for fire protection. And here's some prices. Residential is $2.75 for the first 6,000 gallons. The next 19,000 gallons are 25 cents per 1,000 gallons. Commercial rates are 50% higher. Commercial rates are commercial users are the hardest hit, since this rate has never before been levied. They have to get a 50% increase over residential. So up until now, they've been paying the same thing as residential customers. All right, so this is a prelude to the shirt I'm wearing. It was a gift from our former city commissioner, or city councilor, Martha, and she gave it to me, and it's commemorating our win of All-America City in 1968 and 2004. So the city's plant that we built in 1941 had only lasted not that long. So it was time to upgrade the system. Roger Sinclair, our engineer, was hired in 1965, and he's left a big imprint on Cottage Grove. Not only did he do this groundbreaking sewer plant that he designed on his own time after hours over the course of years, saved the city at that time $20,000 in engineering fees, just doing it on his own time. And he eventually left the city and did his own consulting to build sewer plants. But this was revolutionary. This was, I guess I should spend a little time talking about sewage. So if you're going to treat sewage and just not dump it into the river, you can do it a couple of ways. One way is anaerobically. Like if you've ever had a septic tank, it's anaerobic. It's an oxygen-poor environment under the ground, and a certain type of bacteria thrive in that environment and will eat sewage. It also makes a real stink, and so that's one way to do it. A more efficient way is to do it aerobically. That is, if you provide oxygen, you can get a whole new set of bacteria that are much more effective. But so anyway, we had what we had called a secondary treatment plant, where you get your sewage, you stir it up, you get the bugs, what they call the bugs. They're either bacteria or protozoas that digest the sewage, feed on the human waste or the soap or whatever else they can squeeze some energy out of. They die and settle to the bottom of the tank, and that's sludge. It's a byproduct. It's not poop. It's biomass that's created in the digestion process. The poop is digested and reformed. There still might be some harmful disease pathogens, so you have to treat it. But sludge is a byproduct, and we'll get a little bit more into sludge later. But if you do a secondary treatment, you end up with still, the water's not as clean as it could be. It's still got mineral, like nitrogen, phosphorus, other nutrients, and if you dump it out, it gives algae food to eat. You could get algae blooms or bacteria blooms. So it's not clean enough to dump in the water. Roger in this one included what's called the tertiary process, a third. So instead of secondary, it's the third treatment. So after it comes out of the secondary digester and clarifier, then he sent it over to a third treatment. And in this case, it's these are redwood lath filters. So it's lots of strips of wood, and the treatment effluent from the secondary system trickles through that lath work, and slime forms and drops off, and it cleans the water even. The bacteria thrives in it. It's getting highly oxygenated going through this sprinkler system, and really treats it well. So he's holding up a glass there. In the Cottage Grove Museum is a beaker just like this. This is not it. It was screwed into the display case, so we didn't want to take it out. But a beaker, a simple beaker like that, is in the display case, and just think about that beaker, because it's going to come up. So this was 1967. It was a $177,000 improvement, bonded. And it's again, it was, I think, one of the third tertiary treatment, first in Oregon, but the third in the whole country. Brand new, state of the art. Governor Tom McCall came to help dedicate this because, again, he was a huge proponent, and I'll tell you a little more about that. He was a huge proponent of cleaning up the Willamette. And he drank out of you can't really see it, but right in his hand there is that little beaker that's currently in the medical supply case display at the Cottage Grove Museum. And he drank down effluent from the plant. They later admitted they did boil it first, But anyway, I just want to sing some praises of Governor Tom Collins. He was our 30th governor. He was a Republican, if you can believe it. I mean, today politics is so weird that any Republican that says, "Hey, it would be a good idea to take care of the world," is considered what do you call those? Apostate, you know. But anyway, Tom McCall was a a very progressive Republican. Before he got into politics, he was a newspaper guy, and he later somebody had him read something, and he realized he had a great radio voice, so he did a radio show, and then he ended up in TV, KGW, and while he was there, he did this great documentary called Pollution in Paradise, and you really should look it up. It's on YouTube. It shows just the steaming, stinking morass of the Willamette with dead fish floating in it. They literally take a wire basket of salmon hatchlings and lower it into the river. They all come up gasping for air and die. They couldn't get the air. The river was that oxygen poor, completely dead. So I believe that was made in 1965-ish. When he came to Cottage Grove to dedicate our tertiary thing, and that's when he drank the water out of the beaker. He also did dedicated all the shoreline to the public in Oregon. The bottle bill was not his idea. It was a hunter who was tired of going to his favorite hunting places and seeing all the beer and soda cans left behind. And so he was lobbying for that, and Tom McCall helped steer it through the bottle bill. And he also did the SB 100, which some people think is not so good, but he saw this unregulated growth that happened south of the border, where farms and fields and forests were just bulldozed down and tract homes one after another put up. And he says, no, that we need to preserve farm and forest land. So that's why we have urban growth boundaries that we're currently chafing under. Yes?
So a lot of his policies were actually drafted by Bob Straw, who later became governor, in the house up on CD Loop, so just a little north of there. So Lane County can lay claim to having formulated a lot of those policies, including the beach bill and land management, land use.
Yeah, absolutely. They ran against each other, and I guess he stole the thunder, huh, Tom?
Bob was fine with it.
Yeah, just so long as it happened. And
Bob was great.
yeah, so he had I think McCall had the brilliance to see good ideas and know how to sell them.
Yep.
So anyway, he has a history in Cottage Grove. He was recognized in Portland. They put up because he was a huge fisherman, and there's a park, the Tom McCall Park in Portland, and here he is. You can see the beaker really good. So Cottage Grove got a lot of mileage out of the American city. It was a big, big thing for this little town. This is a homemade billboard that went up along I-5. They hung banners. The paper was full of it, and it wasn't even though the All-American City made a lot of to do about the water treatment plant. There were other reasons why we got that award. But the one that I think it was kind of the reason we got it because of the way it was sold. When you get All-American City, you have to send a delegation and make your case. You're nominated, or you make application, and if you're a finalist, you have to go present your case to the jury. And so when they did that, the city attorney, and I'm blanking on his name at the time, copied McCall, took a bottle of the water, and while he was making the sales pitch, he was drinking the water the whole time, and at the end, he says, guess what? This water I've been drinking came from our sewer treatment plant. And that cinched the case. It made an audible gasp, when people. So it really, I think the sewage plant really was what got us the award. But cited or three other reasons. One is the Riverview Terrace, and that went up in 60 days from start of construction. Our parks program and having police help educate our youth. So the cops in the classroom are three. Those are the cited reasons in addition to our tertiary water treatment plant. It actually worked better than expectations. Roger tweaked it a lot and played with it a lot, but it was outperforming what even he thought. And so he was like, we can't believe these numbers, the quality of water we're getting out of it. And so they applied for a grant to study it and see if they could squeeze out any information that they could share on with other people that were into trying to use the same ideas. And Cottage Grove milked our sewer treatment plant a lot over the years. A lot of people came to look at it, observe, take notes. It ended up in National Geographic in 1972 when they were talking about the results of cleaning up the river, of the Willamette River. And so this is Cottage Grove's page. That's the digester where they're aerated. That's all that bubbling is air being pumped through the sewage, so it will give the bugs the work to do. Here's what it starts out with and the various stages, and there is where you end up. So it still goes through the primaries. You sift out any bottles, rags, caps, that kind of stuff, sand. Secondary, you digest it once. Tertiary, you give it the final touch. 1, 2, 3. And this guy, this is the sludge. People are loading it up to take it away. It's a great amendment to soil. And he's feeding it to a goldfish. You'll see that picture again, too. But, sewage stinks, so, that was always a complaint about the smell, particularly when you would get the sludge out and have to dry it, sun dry it. And here's that fish being fed. The goldfish, they kept it alive just feeding it the sludge. This is the plant supervisor, Peter Hobarth, even claimed he tried eating some of the dried sludge, and it tasted like cardboard. But a food source, it's highly nutritious. Hey, you guys got a special on sludge tonight, Jefferson? Put enough ketchup on it, it'll work. All right, so these, there was so much more I'd love to tell, but I just captured a few catchy headlines to finish this off. Water bills could rise to fund the new plant. Council acts on sewerage and paving. Well, at least they're doing something about the roads. Not like this current bunch. Water rights had to appeal the water rights decision. They were questioning our water rights. Knox Hill Reservoir. They had, I think it was 1950s. They put an additional. They had to replace the little one that was up there and put in another. There's 2 reservoirs on Knox Hill now. 2004, we got $9.4 million loan for wastewater treatment plant improvements. And there's a picture of what the new plant looks like in 2004. Now the brilliant thing about our plant is it's expandable. Cresswell is not in such good shape. They're under a building moratorium because they've kicked the can down the road so long. We've kind of kept up with things, and I know a lot of people don't like paying those big bills, but you're paying for the future, paying forward. So we can expand the current plant. Remember that first picture? It only had one clarifier in there and one little pool. This is the big oxidation ditch where that's where the first digestion happens, and then it goes to the clarifiers here. Higher rates in 1981. That's the first time in 7 years, though, that rates went up. Water line, $100,000. The 2004 improvement, a lot of people that lived on the north end had a lot, you know, on bad days you would really catch a good whiff. And now that's very, very seldom. It's still slightly, you know, sewage smells, what can you say? But that just goes with the territory. What four factors are in play here? Anybody? Decay, good. Growth. Regulation. What's the fourth one? Inflation. Projects set a record. Notice the prices always go up. The original sewer system, $12,000. The last sewage treatment, $9.4 million. All right, well, I think that's about all I have for you right now. I again want to thank all the people that helped me with images, research, moral support. Kathy Bellavita, the Cottage Grove Museum, City of Cottage Grove. Sean and I let me go through all the vaults of plans. And Faye Stewart gave me a lot of good information. We are about 4,000 customers, and so that's our denominator. So when you take all the bills, all the expenses, all the expenditures, all the debt, all the bonds, everything, stack them up on top and divide them by 4,000, that's what you see on your bill. And so it's a small denominator. If we had 20,000 customers, price per unit would be much smaller. Like Springfield, I think they have about 20,000 customers, and so they pay less for water and sewer because it costs a certain amount to do it, and you know, volume increases, of course, but it's the denominator, the bottom line, that decides how much per unit you pay. So do you think you have a better feel about your utility bill now?